Hey everyone, how's it going? It is I, the real Randy Chavez, coming at you today with a Veve OMI podcast, along with photographer Steve Cannon. Everyone say hello to Dashi. And thank you everyone for joining. Oh, shout out to Scott Gladys, who just became a member. So you just got off a plane last night, and you're in Yellowstone, correct?
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I was just joking that I really feel like I made this little jump from real serious wildlife photographer to super serious because I actually, just before I got on the plane from Iowa, I looked at the 5-day forecast and it's warm in Yellowstone, which means the snow is melting and these things are melting. And so I literally at the gate asked the lady to change my ticket, canceled it all, because what I'm trying to do, man, you have to check every box. And so like the snow's got to be right. The snow's, it's got to be cold. You got to see the breath coming out. You got to be able to do all these things. And so the lady was like, yeah, no problem. So at the very last moment, I'm coming to you from boring old Iowa.
Oh, okay.
And so I ditched the Yellowstone. I'll be out there 5 days from now when the weather gets a little bit more heinous.
All right, gotcha. So what you wanted in this particular trip, because when I think wildlife, I'm thinking, okay, well, when the snow's melting, then like the elk and deer and stuff, they'll go and they'll try and eat all the grass from the snow that's melting, and then that's when you get predators. That's when you get action. But you're saying it's not like that. What type of shots are you going for?
So the animals that I'm really drawn to, Randy, are the iconic animals, if you will, the buffalo, the elk, the eagle, the bighorn sheep in the lower 48, the bears, but obviously they're having a good sleep right now. And then if we get outside the lower 48, as I mentioned to you, I'll leave in about 45 days to the Arctic Circle and chase polar bears. So what happens in the cold is you get you really get a lot more emotion. And I think photography and art in general, probably songs as well, poetry, they're all about emotion and helping people feel things. And so when you get that bison with a frozen face or the breath coming out and these kind of things, then you're checking some boxes, storm clouds in the background, these kind of things where it's been said by a mentor of mine that for a photograph to have real gravitas, it has to not only grab you, but it has to hold you. And so you want to try to put as many elements as you can in play. And if the snow is melting and there's mud and there's these kind of things, you don't have the same thing. So for example, when it's freezing cold and there's 2 feet of snow on the ground, the buffalo have to move their head around and they have to dig in it. And then it covers their face. And then they look up and the frost flies out the side, and now you got something where, you might be able to capture that moment in time where, people look at that and they go, that's a shot.
Yeah. So there is, I guess it's similar to like writing an essay where the introduction is supposed to grab the person, get their attention, and then the paragraphs that come after that are supposed to keep their attention. So you
Yeah.
try to do the same thing with photos, have something to
Yeah.
grab the attention and other details to make them stay.
Yeah. You see, and I'm not a great music aficionado, but you've seen there's a couple, and probably some of your listeners and maybe you can relate to where one of these great rock bands just flipped it on their head and they said, well, instead of letting Eddie Van Halen rip the last 30 seconds, let's just come out right off the bat and the drum solo or the music right at the front. Because I think, without knowing them personally, I think that's what they're trying to do, right? They're trying to knock you off center. They're trying to grab your attention and make you, and then hopefully the rest of it, the rest of the 3 minutes can hold them and keep them there. And then they're like, wow, that's something different, something unique, something I haven't heard before. Trying to do the same in fine art photography.
Yeah, I was just listening on the way home. On the way home from the gym, there was a song by Simple Plan. It's called "I Do Anything," and the first couple seconds are, and as soon as you hear that, you're like, "Oh, it's on."
Yeah,
And
that's
obviously
it.
there are plenty of others like that. You have when he like you know, like the Doors, like come on, touch me, babe. There's there's so many other songs like that. That's just happened to be the one in most recent memory. So I understand.
Did the Foo Fighters come out with a song where it's like, or is it a different band where there's like a 30-second or 1 minute drum solo at the start, and you're like, what am I listening to? Like, this never starts like this, you know? But meanwhile, they got you, you know, they've got your attention, and now, you know, if you can deliver the rest of it, you're going to create something, you know, that might stand the test of time.
Yeah, I think and that's not a recent thing. That's been happening since I mean since old classical music. Like I think in one of Anton Dvorak's pieces, it requires like a cannon. It requires a cannon to go off, and like who's thinking about that? I guess in like the 1700s, you not much else there, so you have to do that. But
yeah, that's it, man. That's you hit it on the head. That willingness to go outside of the box, you know. And in photography, for example, there's these rules, like there probably is in music composition, these rule of thirds. So don't ever put your subject right in the middle. But sometimes you can find this particular shot of this particular thing, and when you stick it right damn in the middle, it smacks people in the face, you know. So you're always looking, probably no different than your world, although I'm just getting to know your world a little bit. You want to be authentic. You want to do something that's different and that separates you and gives you an opportunity for people to go, oh yeah, that's really good, but so and so does that in his podcast. Well, you know, for me, that's a kiss of, you know, that's the kiss of death. You don't want to be like, I think I've seen that done before. You know, you're trying to find that unique moment and present that thing that somebody wants to put on their wall, or put in their vinyl collection and share with their friends and be excited about it.
When you said authentic, it reminded me of like it wasn't my first live streams, but it was one of the live streams. It was in 2021 where I would just do this thing like, hey guys, if you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. And I would lean up to give the camera a hug, the audience a hug. And there was maybe like 30 people there at the start. You know, and as soon as I like used my abdominal and my leg muscles to go like this, I just let one rip go. And it was a live stream. It's like, well, you can't say these are not authentic because nobody else is doing that.
And now you're thinking, how am I gonna, you know, that's my thing now. How am I gonna recreate that every time? You know, it's just gonna, that's not an easy gig. But you're exactly right. You know, sometimes it can be the absurd. It can be anything. But you just want to, you know, if you don't deliver in the first 30 seconds of your podcast, then, and especially in this world we're in now, right? Then they're probably like, next.
Yeah, it's So it depends. I mean, I had this thing where when I had the Patreon member sheet, I would just do a Patreon member shout out. I would sing. It was it was wild. I have a board back there now though that's a little different. But there's a subreddit called Praise the Cameraman. Do you go on Reddit, or have you seen it?
I don't know
it. It's usually two cameramen because they show you the shot and how amazing it is, and then there's a cameraman behind the cameraman getting what he's doing and how he's getting it, and that's really cool. So when I don't know how much people appreciate the photo and how much time goes into that, especially the ones where it's negative 20 degrees and you're not just there for 30 seconds to take a picture and go. Like you're there for sometimes hours to try to get the perfect shot. And sometimes you're there for hours and you don't even get that shot. Typically, how long does it, for some of your best work, how long has it taken to get that shot?
It's a perfect lead in. It's a great question. It's something that we've got a show coming up here locally, and we're working on a 3 to 5 minute live loop, which is going to address what you just talked about. It's going to be a clip of the biggest elephant in the world and me laying on my belly in the dirt in Africa, 30 feet in front of him.
Is that the one in Tanzania?
No, he's actually in, and when I say biggest, I mean biggest tusked.
Okay.
and there's many bigger elephants, but this is the biggest of the big tuskers. And because it makes just such a huge difference if you can put people there and that camera behind the camera, because, oh geez, I can't even say 9 out of 10. It's higher than that. It's 90 for what I'm trying to get. It's 99 times out of 100 you miss, because you have to check every single box. You have to have the clouds, you have to have the movement, you have to have the environment around it. The light has to be just right. The animal's got to be, you got to catch his eyes. The eyes are the window to the soul. And you have to, that creates the connection when someone sees it. So, there's a lot of times, to give you an idea, I was on a 10-week in Africa, and for the ease of explanation here, it was 10 different 7-day safaris, right? And I'd show up, and a couple of those were guides that I'd worked with before, but when I would, and so they knew the gig, but for the newer guides, I would just go, just so you know, because I don't want you to get disappointed, because most of the people they're taking are there for the experience, and they've got their cell phone and they're just like, click, 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 click. And all of that is fantastic, right? But I told them my hope and goal is that over the course of these 7 days, I get one shot. And I don't even expect to get one shot. If over the course of, those 10 weeks, I can come back with 5 images that I really feel strong about, that's a huge win. And so I'm up at 4:30, and the sun's up at 6, and the sun goes down at 6 for ease of explanation, and I'm out there most of the whole time, although we don't really shoot much during the middle of the day because the sun's so hot. But that gives you an idea, out of all of that time, 40 hours, 60 hours a week in the field, if I can get one crack, I'm happy to do it. So you're right. And storytelling is a big part for me as well. So even with our images that go on the wall, if they don't have a video component to them, there's a story there, and they get to read the making of the shot. So it's really cool that made an impression on you. And you mentioned that about Reddit, because it's the same. When I watch other great photographers, when you can see them working, there's so much to be learned, and also a real appreciation when it comes to wildlife. Just so many times where you're like, just 10 more feet, just 5 more feet, just three more feet, just one more, and then he takes a right turn. And that's exactly what happens. And that's what happens most of the time. Or you're like, okay, he's drinking in the water, there's not enough light quite yet, and you're looking through your camera, and it's getting a little closer, and it's getting a little closer, and you can already start to see the reflection of the elephant in the water, and you're like, this is why I came to Amboseli. And then 2 minutes before the light's going to work, he lifts his head up, and he's had his drink of water, and he walks away. And you're like, you've been sitting there, you got up at 3:30, you got there at 4:30, you'd been scoping the place out for a week and a half, or 5 days, whatever it is, for this exact moment. And then 2 minutes before you're going to get the shot, which justifies the whole week, he just kind of gives you like, peace out. So yeah, it's cool to get the behind the scenes stuff, because that heartbreak also shows, what all goes into it. Because when you see it up on the wall, how are you going to piece that together?
Yeah. I mean, some people, like, again, go to Reddit and search "praise the cameraman," and everyone here will have a much better appreciation of what they do.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out, because we're trying to do more and more of that, is to put a camera with me wherever I go, because in addition, sometimes something really kick ass happens that you're not going to get an image of, but it might be a lion that's coming this way, and then another one comes to challenge that lion out of nowhere, and there's no shot, but you've got video of these 2 lions all of a sudden just get so there's a lot of different ways. And I think at the end of the day, what I really want to accomplish is just to maybe open people's eyes up a little bit more to the natural world. And I think technology is a great thing, but it's easy to spend all of our time in this little, 3-inch by 2-inch box and forget that, there's places like Africa and there's wild animals and there's an environment. And so all of those things are, pretty damn
Yeah,
important.
it's a barbaric yet graceful ecosystem. And I don't know if you spend a lot of time on Instagram, but there's an account called Nature is Metal. Have you found it?
I haven't, but I do spend a fair amount of time on there just researching and looking at things. But now you've given me 2 things to check out, and I'm guessing it's pretty brutal.
Yeah, so Nature's Metal is just most of them are amateur videos, but some of them every now and then, like I guess is what these people do. They just go and they're always on safaris and they're just you see a Komodo dragon ripping out a baby doe from its once pregnant mother and just eating it, or monkey like and I know it's getting very graphic and it sounds like I'm enjoying it, and I'm really not. It is just it's just wild to see. But have you ever got all the pictures that I've seen on your website or Instagram have been beautiful shots, but I haven't seen any of like a monkey ripping like a gazelle's leg off. I haven't seen like any of the brutal. Like, do you take pictures of those? Do you try not to?
Yeah,
And why?
So in the world I play in, which is the fine art world, uh, the reality of that world is that very few, if anybody is going to put that scene you just described above their fireplace.
That's a
And
good point.
even though, so for example, one of my very favorite shots that I'll never sell, last year about this time in Yellowstone, there was a big pack of wolves that for about a mile or so from the road, we could see just before sunset took down a bison.
Nice.
And so the next morning, about 2 hours before sunup, I threw my snowshoes on and I hiked the Yellowstone River. I'd figured out where I thought the kill had taken place. And as I got closer, then I used the eagles overhead to bring me the rest of the way, and really dial me in on where they were, because you figure out kind of how the natural world works if you're around there. And so, the commotion and you see so anyway, the picture eventually is the wolves had been on it for most of the night. So most of them were fat, happy, and sleeping in different areas around there. But during the day, they would come and go to have a Scooby snack and do their thing. And I have one photo of this big black wolf, and he's standing over the bison kill, and he's got a big giant pork chop hanging from his mouth. And I think it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's brutal, but it's the natural world, and it tells a really big story. But the truth of the matter is, no one's going to pay 10 or 20 grand to put that wolf with a pork chop over their thing. And so so I've seen, I saw in Africa hyena run this baby topi around in circles, which a topi is just a fancy African deer or gazelle. Right. I was there during the calving season, so these little things are running all over the place. But we sat there and it was incredible. I mean, hyenas will they can run forever, so they'll just chase their prey until their prey just eventually goes, "I'm tired. I know I'm going to die, but I can't run anymore." So you sit there and you see it, and it is a brutal scene, but it's. I mean, we can't deny who we are. We're still all predators at heart in some way. So when you see that thrill of the chase, it does get your heart rate up. But it's not the kind of thing that you can make a business out of. We'll put it that way.
Yeah. So are you not selling that photo that you have because it means so much to you, or because you think it won't sell? Because I guarantee you there's probably multiple people that would love to have that.
Yeah. It's I'm not against it. Matter of fact, I'm really for it. Because I think this one, is very tasteful in that there's no fight, there's no anything like this. It's just, there's eagles and birds in the background, and it really shows Montana in all its beauty. And I'd love for you to be right, and maybe this is the place we need to throw it out there and see what people think about it, because it's a really special photo to me, because it took a hell of a lot of work to get back there, to get the wind right, to be in a position where none of those animals knew I was there, and to sit with a pack of wolves over a kill and not have them know you were there from 200 yards away for 2 or 3 hours. One of the great thrills of my life. And so, yeah, the photo means the world to me. And I'd love nothing more than if, 1 or 1,000 people were like, you send me that bad boy, I'm all over it.
Yeah. I mean, there's people in general have different varying ways they can define romance. And some people's sense of romance is a little dark.
Yeah.
Like if you watch the Dahmer series on Netflix recently, like a few months ago, in there they show the fact that they had an auction of all of Dahmer's stuff, and people were looking like to buy it in the show. And before the scene ended, like the scene was still going on as I watched it, I was going up on eBay to see if I could find like the drill that he used or this that he used. And then I had found out in the next scene they explained that somebody bought the entire thing and just destroyed it all. I don't know what that says about me, but if there are people that are looking to buy things that a serial killer had used, I think there'd be multiple people that would want to pay for that type of photo. Which, yeah, it is a little brutal, but you said it's not like that brutal. It tells a story.
I think maybe we might be creating the first real Randy Chavez, Steve Cannon authentic partnership drop. I think we ought to give this a shot, man.
I mean, I've had a lot of success recently with Alfred Kahn, the head of licensing for OMI, where we got 2 cards. He signed them, and one was a silent auction, and one was a raffle, like donate $10 to his charity, and then you get an entry, and you could do it as many times as you wanted. Obviously, we would have to have a threshold because your work is very high end. Like, I don't think you've sold anything for less than 5 figures, correct? It's all been in the tens of thousands.
Yeah. But something like this, we also recently have just been talking about, like, how do we turn on more spigots, if you will? Meaning, there's a lot of images like this one, for example, that we wouldn't see as a 5-figure image, that if we were educated to an opportunity and somebody was like, you ought to drop 10,000 of these for $5 a piece. Yeah, I'm just making stuff up because I don't know who
Yeah.
You're the real Randy and I'm not. But I'm just saying, I would be more than down to be like, yeah, man, let's give that a fly. I'll send you the image with the wolf and the bison and the pork chop. It's an incredible image, and you just be like, here's what I think we could do with it. And I'd be like, then let's freaking do it.
Yeah. I mean, if you just coming from the Veve world, but now they only have one thing, and it's X amount of mints, but they used to have the same character in like 5 different poses. So what I was thinking, we could have maybe like a wide shot, one in black and white, one like the actual full color, one that. So again, things just rolling around in the brain. Obviously we could talk about that. So because you have so much that you have so many photos of stuff that you're using, and then stuff that's unused.
How cool would it be, dude, if you and I mashed up a Predator series and we just did some of these like on the edge, because same thing. I've done some work with killer whales. It opens up my opportunity to do some things on the edge. I'm going to the Kalahari to chase black-maned lions in May, and maybe this pork chop we put together, and if it gains some traction, then we do this very niche Predator series where it's really cool, and it's kind of probably in between the fine art and the nature is metal thing that you're talking about, and giving people that sort of real life maybe not so gory, intestines flying all over the screen kind of thing, but the kind of thing where I agree with you, man. Like at some point when I have my cabin, I promise you that piece, that wolf with that pork chop and that dead bison there with the snow and the crows all around them, it'll be a big piece in my house. I freaking love it.
Yeah, if we have a Venn diagram of the two, like the fine art and then the nature is metal, I would say a good 15% overlap, from each. I would
Yeah.
say that.
And you and I chopped that up just a little bit yesterday, and it's just like it's cool to talk about it now because I agree. I think there is a play where with the right person, and I'm not it, meaning as far as the knowledge of it, but with someone like you that knows it and goes, "Hey, man, this pork chop, and we can start that one, and I think it would structure best this way, and people would respond to it in this form, and in this many runs." I'd be like, all day, bro. Let's take this out for a spin, and if it works, then we'll figure out what do we think our people want for the next predator series. Is it a lion? Is it an alligator? Is it a saltwater crocodile? I mean, you could there's all of these predators, or again, I'll go to the Arctic Circle, and there's a good chance that there's going to be a polar bear that's, grabbed a seal, and
Yeah.
you can get it in that 15% where we promote, we show kind of this real thing without it being, a bludgeoning or whatever the case. So, man, I'd love to try and chop something up with you. I think that'd be cool. I'd learn a hell of a lot, and maybe some people would dig it.
Yeah, a lot of people would dig it. So this would be, we'll obviously talk about this further and off camera and all that.
Right on.
So in all the places you traveled, I'm guessing you've done 6 continents, and I'm guessing the one you haven't done is Antarctica.
I haven't been to Antarctica, and I don't have 6, but I'm getting up there, but I don't have Antarctica. And it is, I have a sense because I've done some things, I rode my fat bike across Alaska in the dead of winter, the cold and the adventure. It was 1,000 miles, 25 days, all of my stuff still on my bike. An event that's called the Iditarod Trail Invitational. So beyond that, my whole point is I think after this polar bear trip, being in these really cold, badass, harsh environments is going to be something. But Antarctica, it might as well be a different planet.
Yeah, I mean that does take, I think about 2 years of planning, depending on what you want to do, because there's we used to, well, I never went there, but in the military, we have a base there, and there's, for the military, which, yeah, there's some red tape, but they can move in an instant. It's like a good 6 month, like, hey, you'll know mostly like 6 months beforehand that you're going, and you have to prepare for it. You have to do whatever. I think for civilians to do something like that, not only like the permits, the travel, like the safety people, it'd probably take at least a year of preparation.
Yeah, you're spot on, man. We've been in process for over a year on this polar bear trip to go up to almost the top of the world, northern Canada, a real remote island. We'll be the first photographer that these Inuit guides that have spent their whole life and their father's whole life and their grandfather's whole life killing polar bears as polar bear guides, ethically, with permits, that whole thing.
Yeah.
But they want to see if they can move into some ecotourism. But the guide that's taking me is an expert in that area. The chances are when we go, temperatures will get as low as -50. And so the gear, the preparation, everything, because of the stuff I've done in Alaska, that was the only reason he agreed to take me, because he was just like, the learning curve is so steep in this environment. But you're exactly right. It's not the kind of thing. And if this works, which I think it will, then we've already talked about doing more of this stuff in really gnarly places. And then, again, maybe that allows us to provide some really unique, cool things to your audience and chop some things up and do some cool things. But yeah, you're spot on. Antarctica is not just yeah, you can hop on a tour boat and they can drive you, they can float you on by and it stays 50 degrees on the deck. But if you're going to put feet on the ground, you're exactly right. It's not, you make a mistake at -50 and take your hand out of your glove for 2 or 3 minutes. By the time
Oh,
you put it back in, you're probably gonna lose a finger. So,
yeah.
you know, I've spent a pretty decent amount of time in that environment, and I'm scared shitless to go up here for this trip. It's a whole different game for me.
Wow.
And that's not even counting, you know, that it's the apex predator. It's the one, you know, it's the one bear on the planet that, you know, is not scared of people and it'll just eat anything, you know.
Yeah, that's the biggest land predator. And when you have, so you were, so obviously things can be exciting and an adrenaline rush at the same time. Would you consider yourself an adrenaline junkie because of the way you hiked up a couple miles in snowshoes? You said a couple 100 feet or a couple 100 yards away from a pack of wolves. Now, granted, they were already fed and, you know, fat and happy, but those are still, you know, they could close that gap pretty quickly. What are
Yeah,
your feelings in those
I
times?
I think I think those circles you drew before and the
You've been that, yeah.
15% that comes together, I think that's a good example. Cliff Notes version, I spent the first half of my life trying to self-destruct and bad habits and all of those kind of things. And when I finally dug out of that hole, I've just from that point on felt like I'm trying to play catch up for all the years I wasted, you know, alcohol and all of the things that go along with that. And so I think I definitely have a zest for life and I want to live it to the fullest and I want to see everything and I want to feel everything. But I certainly don't feel like I've got a death wish by any means. I go to a lot of effort to make sure the guides that are taking me and putting me in front of these elephants or tigers or, you know, lions or whatever it may be. And in this case, the polar bears, that I've done a hell of a lot of research, because I will say one of my mentors told me, he said, if your pictures aren't good enough, then you're not close enough. And so I take that to heart. And I do think that most animals, if you're not an idiot and you show them proper respect, you're going to be okay. But there are times when your guide knows what that animal is thinking way before you, because he's so familiar with them. And so I do think you have to go to great lengths, but that's just my opinion of myself. I think some people probably would say it's an adrenaline junkie. You know, I will say my last trip to Africa, at one point I had a 450-pound silverback that I got a beautiful shot of. And then he walked up to me on the trail and my guide just said, you're fine, you're fine. And I was laying on my belly and eventually he was right here, right here. And I was laying on the ground and he literally just stopped right next to me on the trail. And, you know, they're very gentle giants, but at the same time, you know, it's a 1,700-pound force that a silverback of that size can hit with. So at that moment, you're thinking, so, you know, depending on who was the camera behind the camera at that moment, brother, they would say you're an adrenaline junkie, you're a fool, you know, and it was the greatest thrill of my life. And at the same time, because I'd been there for a while and I knew these guides and I knew these, you know, I knew I had a guide right next to me as well. And he was just like, you're chill, it's cool, you know, and it was. And eventually, you know, I kind of stood up real slow and looked over and the gorilla was just like, he was just curious, checking me out. But I guess we'd have to leave that up to whoever it is. But if adrenaline junkie means I want to keep getting close to really big animals and be in their environment and immerse myself totally, then yeah, I am. But I want to do it with really professional people around me that will go, hey man, get your ass up, because this elephant is he's aggravated. We need to move. And I've had that happen. And I don't ask questions. And at the same time, I don't ask questions when everything inside of me tells me to move. And the guide says, you're fine. Just chill. So
I mean, that would definitely make me feel a lot better. with the one the guide's saying it's all right, you're good, just keep doing what you're doing. But when something's that close to you and they say, hey, you're not good, and like if he wants you, like you're done. Like there was this one video I saw of these other people taking photos and they're just laying perfectly still, and the gorilla just with like two fingers just like grabs the dude's leg and just drags him for like 10 and just leaves him. But I guess you've seen that.
I've seen it. I've seen it. Yeah. And I'll tell you, if anybody watching or if you haven't been to Africa and you do decide to go, you have to put the gorillas of Rwanda on your list. It has to be on the top of your list. There's a connection. When you get in amongst them, you can't deny the feeling that you're looking at yourself. You're looking at your history, and I've seen that video, and after being in there, I sat with the same group of gorillas like 4 days in a row, and they're exactly like us. Like the teenagers are just mischievous as hell. They're trying to like fight each other all the time. And by the third or fourth day, I was taking a picture of this big silverback, and one of them, I didn't even see him coming. One of them just came from my blind side and he just knocked me on my ass. And he just kept running. And I swear I could hear him laughing as he ran off. Like, it was just, and I wasn't scared. You just realized like, they're just the same as us. And I think really after I saw that video and I sat with them, I swear after that guy and his whole group left, that they all just get together and they, and the one that grabbed him, is chopping it up with his friends. He's like, you saw what I did, right? You saw that? Yeah, that was pretty cool, right? Because they're just, if you don't do anything stupid around gorillas, they might grab you, they might knock you over, but, it's no different than you and me hanging out with our high school buddies, but you have to see it to believe it. But yeah, you're right. There are those situations where you do realize that, if it wasn't for these opposable thumbs, we'd be, way low on the food chain.
Very low. Yeah. If you so you mentioned the gorillas in Rwanda. Is that where this picture is from?
Yeah, that's my crew. And you can see those are weapons.
Yeah.
And I think you're a military guy, so you can probably tell by looking at those guys. They're smiling, but it's no joke up there. But the majority of that hardware is for bad operators that would think to come and poach that area. But yeah, it's that was in Rwanda, and yeah, I was fortunate. I had my own crew for quite a few of the treks, and yeah, hell of an experience. One I never dreamed I'd have, but the camera's really become a vehicle to see the world and have some kick-ass experiences.
So that crew is probably more familiar with those gorillas than any other group of people in the world, because they try to protect them, right?
Yeah, man, they're with them. They're with them every day. Literally, they stay with the gorillas every day. When the gorillas are very on their routine. So at 6 p.m., the whole group just knocks down a small area of the forest, and the whole gorilla family goes to bed, and the trackers mark them on GPS. They leave. They get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. They go back to that exact spot. And at about 6 a.m., the gorillas get up and they start walking. And so they're with them every single day. So because of that, they know the bad operators within the family. They know the ones that, you need to be really chill about because this one's got a bad temper, or they're like, look, man, there was one time when I was just sitting there and one of the big ones just came and he just sat right next to me. I mean, just right next to me, and he was just hanging out, eating some bamboo, and he's looking at me like, hey, what's up, dude? Everything good? He's just doing that thing, and he's right.
Was that this guy?
Yeah. and he was just, and there's a video we can share at some point, or we do it again or whatever. But, I'm like, because I didn't have a shot, but it was a hell of an experience. So I've got my iPhone, and, I put it, and you can see my arm, and you can see his head's like 8 inches from my arm while he's eating, and I put it back on my face, and I'm like, but he's right there. But the whole point is you're right. Those guys are with him every day, and the gorillas are habituated that they know people are going to be coming every day. You only get 1 hour with them, so they're really protective so that they can live their life and that sort of thing. And so I think the gorillas look forward to the interaction as much, if not more so, every day. And so again, they would tell us before we went in, do what I say when I say, don't ever make a quick move, and no matter what, don't ever run. And so you're just like, okay, and so when they if the gorilla's coming right at you and he says don't move, you don't move. And he's like, I only have one bad story, and it's when one was doing that and I said don't move, and the guy took off running. And he's like that just activates a whole different side of their brain. And then he got to him and gave him a good whack and didn't kill the guy, but it was way different than just a fun little tug and drag you 10 feet. Like when you see them, the hierarchy in a group of gorillas, not unlike lions and those kind of things, it's really strict. So whoever's the silverback, there's no fooling around. If somebody steps out of line, he thumps them.
Yeah.
I don't mean humans. I mean, they would do, but humans, but within and when you see a big silverback bring the thunder, it is terrifying. The speed at which they can move and the force at which they'll thump somebody, a younger one that wants to maybe challenge the king. You're just like, man, I don't ever want to be that person, because good God, it's awesome to see. And I got to see one charge and do that. And you're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. The things that I've been thinking of, where I think it was on like a Joe Rogan podcast where him or his guest mentions that like this little like small chimp that's like maybe 30 pounds, is climbing all over him and hits him on the back. And he thought it would be like a kid, but it felt like a man, like hitting you on the back. It's like, oh, that isn't what I felt like at all. And obviously, silverbacks that weigh like not 100 times that, but weigh like 50 times that. You're probably going to have a good 30 times the pressure. That's.
I think I hated that I did my research, because when that gorilla was standing over me, all I could remember is 1,700 pounds in a whack, and I'm like, he's just gonna crack my head like a coconut if he's having a bad day. So but again, what are you gonna do?
So there's I don't know if it was for National Geographic. I don't remember what happened to the photographer. I think he felt kind of sick afterwards. But it's a photo of, I don't know if it's a condor or what are those birds that they only feed on like dead animals?
Yeah, so the biggest one and the most rare one in the world is the condor. They were almost extinct.
Maybe it was a condor. He was in Africa, and there's this kid that's maybe 2-3 years old, and the kid is about to die. Whether it had a big belly, so probably intestinal worms, or so what other else disease. And you see the condor like in the background, like is waiting for the kid to die, and there's nothing that the guy could do. And he took the photo, and it won some award, but the photographer felt kind of a certain type of way after that. Has there been anything like that you've taken, or is like, maybe I shouldn't have taken that, or have you had a similar experience like that?
That's when you're laying out that story, the photographer in me is just like, my God, what a phenomenal opportunity. Yeah. Because you're telling a great story, not a happy story, but you're telling a real story of death and what's going to happen afterwards and all of those kind of things. And so, of course, there's a human component, right? You're like, God, I won all these awards, but at the cost of this kid dying. And, that's not true. It's just an incredible photo, and it's a really sad photo, no different than, I I can't say that I've been fortunate or unfortunate enough to be in a situation like that is so compelling. But I think more than anything, it's been those times where I wanted to video the whole hyena taking this topi, running it around until it finally gave up. And then, there's moments when it's eating, right? It has to eat so viciously because, anything that dies makes a certain sound, and that sound is the dinner bell. And every hyena is coming now, or lion is going to be here in 5 minutes. So they don't sit there and eat with nice manners with a napkin and a fork. I mean, they're, it's on, and the bones are cracking and everything is going on, and it's vicious. And at the same time, there's just this, right? Like, how do you censor one and then not celebrate the other?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is we watch that and you're just like, that was incredible. It was brutal. You've just got all these adjectives that are going, I can't believe I was so fortunate to see that. And then the next thought is, I can't believe I just saw that. I wish I'd have never saw that. So you've got this whole thing going on. And then we hopped in the Jeep and went over the hill, and we could see something happen. And my guide's a Maasai guide, and they know things that we would never know before we would have. And not 5 minutes after we'd watched that viciousness, we watched a topi be born.
Oh, wow.
And you're like, okay, so can you celebrate one without the other? Right.
Yeah.
And so one is part of the other. The death makes the life more meaningful. The life makes the death more meaningful. And so I don't know that there's a perfect answer to it, but I didn't pick up the camera. I didn't share the video. And I guess we all got to make that choice. But for me, I felt really blessed to see that so quickly afterwards, because it kind of stopped the debate in my mind, because then I was like, I can't know the beauty of one without knowing the destruction of the other.
That's a good point. I don't mean to be so morbid with all of these. It's just I feel like that's nature.
Are
But
you a Steve Irwin guy?
Oh, so I don't know if I ever told you this.
I got some guys that know you a little bit that introduced us, and they said we got to talk about Irwin at some time. And so I was just starting to, like, I've been a hunter my whole life, and then the camera replaced the bow and arrow for me. But yeah. I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you think about Irwin? Was he a junkie? Like, I mean, like an adrenaline junkie. Like, his death was really tragic, and he wasn't an unintelligent guy. It was just a freak thing. But where do you fall on all of that? And was he a big deal for you? Like, were you a really big fan, or and that kind of thing? Is it your deal?
Yeah. So I was, growing up in the 90s, and that, that's what he was on. It was before him. It was really into Jack Hanna's Animal Experience. But he was very, much more tame. He was very much more, not as, rock star. He was a little older too. So Steve Irwin came on, like Crocodile Hunter. I was like, okay, what is this? And, like, I always thought animals were really cool. Love animals. I was a veterinarian assistant for like 9 years before I joined the military. So I love them. And you kind of hear when you're younger, oh, like the rainforests are dying and endangered species. But, here's someone that's like offering in his own way a solution. Like, yeah, these animals are not going to be okay here because of X, Y, and Z. So we're going to move them over to this area. And the amount of times you get clawed and bitten and just gored, and he always says that anytime that an animal got hurt or he got hurt, he said it was always his fault. He never put blame on the animal, which I thought was really, really big, because in the veterinary field, it's not always like that. You see some people get bit, and see some people get hurt, and you see it's their fault, but they blame the animal, and it's like, so he was definitely, he deserved to be that level of what he got to, and the fact that he takes one of his interviews, he says, and me, I love money, and I don't give a rip whose money it is, and I'm going to take it, and I'm going to put it into wildlife conservation. And I I have 150 million OMI, and I plan to have still 100 million by the time 2030 hits, or by the time we're $1 per OMI, and 90% of it will go to animal conservation. Currently, it is, I'm thinking Madagascar and Indonesia that happen to have the most endangered species with them. And if I have money left over, animal sanctuaries in the U.S. So yeah, I want to be the brown Steve Irwin. Like that whole family, big heroes of mine.
Man, that's killer. I knew it. I could smell it on you. There's stuff that there's things that we're going to need to do together, man. It's and we'd need 8 hours here, and with both of our phones would die, and everybody listening would be asleep and sick of listening to us. But there's hearing that, knowing that, there's so many ways that are beyond my mind right now from just our start here. But man, there's a lot of things we can do with maybe, these drops that we're talking about, or things like that, where we can have them benefit conservation efforts and things like that. That's really cool. That's really cool to hear, dude. That's commendable.
So
and that's a spot on Steve Irwin imitation as well. So
I've watched him for many years.
That's solid. The brown Steve Irwin is great too. I freaking love that.
Yeah, in Veve, I have over 200 common alligator Lokis. They're not crocodiles, but they're alligators. So that's as close as I can get. So
have you seen a croc in the wild yet?
In Florida, I think they're gators, right? They're not crocs.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen gators. I have not seen a croc in the wild.
I'll be interested to get your take when you do, because when I saw one for the first time in Africa, a real good sized adult on the riverbank, he was just sleeping. It was the scariest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I can't I can't even imagine the force. Like I said, the work that guy did, and just, I don't even know that I'd have the stones to get 100 yards from one with my camera in front of them. Just they're terrifying. They're the freak of nature.
Yeah.
Just a perfect machine for what they do, which is nothing more than reproduce and kill.
Yeah, they're dinosaurs that cannot eat for a really long time, and they can. The thing that's most impressive is they can choose to, I have this laceration on my gut or in my left arm, and they can choose to stop blood flow to that area so they don't bleed out. Like, that's insane. That's a superpower. That's insane.
It's a superpower, and I think it even kind of full circles back to what we were talking about, which is you will probably never see a fine art image of a crocodile offered for sale. But there is, even in just talking to you here, there is a section where the circles intertwine, where someone is, and I would totally understand it. It's the most ridiculously terrifying animal I've ever seen, and there is a beauty in it. You're a perfect example, right? You got 100 of those things, right?
Yeah, I got 200 of the common, 34 of the ultra rare. Yeah, I went pretty hard.
I don't want to jump back into it, but I'm telling you, man, you've got my head spinning on this predator idea that you had earlier about the wolf and the things that could come from there. because it gives me another thing that I can really focus on, no pun intended, and that I also up to a certain point really see the beauty in it and the marketability and that people would dig it.
Yeah, I agreed. Same.
And I think the crocodile's a perfect example. I don't think it's anything that I'm ever going to hang in, the Maddox Gallery in London, but that doesn't mean that it's not a hugely viable collector piece if done right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that there's a couple of I mean, I have a million ideas. There's no shortage of those. There, that most of them are not good though. Most of them are just like, bad. But that happens to be one that I think is good. But you're not like this. Oh, hey, I'm gonna take this on like a cell phone. Like, yeah, professional equipment. You've been doing this for a long time. I'm gonna go to the chat down here, and I'm gonna post a link to your website and have everyone go check it out. You sell stuff again to this clientele that has money, and there are people like that in Veve already that have spent well into the six figures on NFTs on these new Veve NFTs where it's technically kind of a risk. And with the blockchain is every time one of them sells, even if it's from person to person, it's out of your hands, you could still get a little piece of it. Or you split that piece with whatever animal organization you want. Yeah, so this is pretty exciting. I'm pretty pumped for it.
What do you? I got a question for you. Do you, to understand the collector mindset a little bit more, because I did a few baseball cards, but I never got crazy about it, right? And do you collect your 100 alligators for your own pleasure or for the eventual downstream value, or is there an intersection of those two different circles for you? And do you think your answer to that question is going to be representative of the collector mindset, that they collect more to have them, or that they plan, at someday to unload their 100 alligators for 10x what they, or 100x what they bought them?
So it's not my first love, but Pokemon is a really big deal for me, and it's being thrown by Donkey Kong. Yeah, the Pokeball is being thrown by Donkey Kong. When I was in the high risk lending business, and I had my own business giving out money to business owners, and this is like my first big boy job where making big boy money. The military, I guess, it's a big boy job, but you're not making big boy money at all. If you deployed, you can make a little bit more, but I'm making real money, and everyone and their sisters like tell me what to do with it, and I put most of the profits into Pokemon cards, either into other businesses, other loans, or into Pokemon cards, and everyone's like, "This is stupid. You're stupid. This is cardboard." And I started because I love collecting, but then I noticed some patterns in there that the first edition PSA 10 Holo would go for anywhere from 5 to 8 times of its PSA 9 counterpart. Anything above or below that meant one was overvalued or undervalued. And it was the easiest game of arbitrage ever. And it quickly became, hey, how much more money can I make? Because again, I've had these ideas for the animal sanctuaries for, since I got out of the military, since I finally started making money. And I realized that it's possible. So, but again, I still love them. And as long as I was making money with Pokemon cards, that was fine. But when I found Veve or Okomi, and I found OMI, I immediately recognized that, yeah, a bunch of these cards can maybe, 6, 8, or 10x by the end of the decade, but OMI's going to do a lot more. So I sold Bitcoin, I sold my Tesla stock, and I sold all the Pokemon cards for OMI. And if I was just worried about return on investment, which, for the most part I am, I wouldn't have any of these digital collectibles. I would only have OMI. But the collector in me has like my heart has kind of overtaken my brain, by saying, hey, these things are really cool and I like them. And yeah, I'll buy stuff that's undervalued. Even though I know it's not going to give me as good return as OMI. It is that's just the collector in me. That's a little kid inside me saying like, hey, I'm still gonna collect what I like, even though, this other part of my brain is telling me not to. I know it's a really long-winded answer, to your
You know,
question.
it's what I was suspicious of. I don't mean suspicious in a bad way,
No.
but suspicious like, I just wonder how many of the collectors, they get that. I think Jeremy Lyons is on here, and he's crazy with his Ultramans, and he's given me a great education, and we talk about the value of them someday. But I wonder if someday ever comes for a collector, if you are really able to go, am I willing for any dollar amount to open up my wallet or my little whatever you call it tomorrow, and all 100 of my alligators are gone? Does it become a marriage where you just keep going, I just can't sell it, I just can't sell it, I just can't sell it?
Yeah, I mean, I'll buy more as the years go on, but I have so much in OMI, and I have really not a ton in Veve collectibles that they'll rise together, and there'll be arbitrage opportunities. One will rise first, one will rise next, but it's like, okay, the rising tide will raise all ships. So in 2 years, when the market's up and we're in a full-on fledged bull market, pretty much every 0.6 cents or 0.65, 0.68 cents that it goes is an extra $1 million. And when we're at 2 or 3 cents and I have like $4 or $5 million, I'm not going to care that Loki's went from $8 to $80. It's like, yeah, that's cool, but it's like, I don't really need, at that point I don't need to sell.
Yeah. So
it's
once a collector, always a collector, maybe never a seller.
Yeah, I mean, I'll sell certain things now for other things, because I'll take profit in one and I'll go and I'll get something else that I think is undervalued. But that's just because there's one, you can't use OMI to buy gems yet or buy NFTs yet, but also because it's I have everything in OMI, so that's But
yeah, that's cool. It's a nice look into the collector mindset.
Yeah. So what about you? What have you bought on Veve, or are you more OMI?
I'm a OMI guy. I haven't. I'm the dumbest OMI guy you'll probably ever meet. Jeremy and Megs were good enough to, we have coffee together, and they eventually were just like, there's this thing, and they kind of laid it on me, and then I got to the point where the partnerships that I was aware of and the research I did on the people that were running those things, whether it was Pokemon or whatever the case may be, it just became a no-brainer for me. I was like, look, I can spend the next 50 days in a row, 10 hours a day in front of my computer doing all this research, or I can just trust the fact that, the head of Disney marketing or the head of, whatever giant Pokemon or whatever it is that's attaching their star to this is way smarter than me. And, so that's good enough for me. And so, that's, but, Jeremy's a perfect example. He loves to collect. And so when something's about to drop where he's like, hey brother, you need to hop in on this one and hit and take a swing, because if you get lucky and you hit, so I've had I haven't done it. I haven't done it for a while, but I have had a couple of those times where I'm like, all right, I'll take a swing at this, and I'm sitting there and I'm waiting and shit, so I could see, and I, as I mentioned earlier on, I definitely have an addictive side to my personality to where when I get on something, you know, I go all the way. So I think there's a part of me that's like, yeah, you better, you know, hitting that little. I'm like, that could get out of control, man. I've got a couple loves in my life, so I'm like you. I don't even, if you ask me right now where OMI was on the market, I couldn't tell you. I haven't looked. I don't care. You know, I'm just sitting there because I know I've got enough irons in the fire that when it starts to do what we all know it's going to do, that my phone's just going to explode, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll go look at what it's at now, because, you know, I agree with you. It's gonna do crazy things. So I'm not a big collector. The things I'm in love with, chasing animals and those kind of things, they get all my time. And then, like you, 1,000 ideas, and hopefully I can make some partnerships and run it by a few people that can parse out the bullshit that I'm really excited about and help me kind of zero in on the things that there might be some shared love and excitement for, kind of like what we talked about at the start here with maybe the pork chop and the wolf and that sort of thing. And so that's where, you know, that's where my heart lies. But I get really geeked watching people that are passionate about anything. And so even when I'm sitting in the coffee and Megs and Lions are talking about, you know, going after this or going after that, and, you know, I've got 17 of them, or I got 170 of them, or like you with 100 of them, you know, it's not my world, but I love anybody who's passionate and geeked out about something, and I can suck that energy right along when they're talking about it. So yeah, for me, it's just been get as much OMI as I can every time I can, and I'm waiting for the, you know, we were just sitting there yesterday and kind of joking. I'm like, wonder how many other people are like us and are sitting there going, I can't believe I've got this much money in one thing, and all I'm thinking about is that I hope the needle doesn't move at all for the next year, so I can just get as much as possible. You know, it's the first thing I've ever been in where, you know, I put $1 in and I'm not waking up every day hoping it goes to 3. You know, I'm hoping it doesn't move so I can, you know, or keeps going lower so I can just keep jumping into it and get as fat as possible. But because I, you know, like I said, I know enough from those guys and to feel really, really stoked to see something that's gonna. And I can only imagine for you that, and a lot of people that actually have the collectible love, it's like the greatest double-edged sword ever. You're playing on this side, and at the same time you've got, you know, every so often here comes a new partnership and another one, and you're just like, what? You know, it seems to be never ending, where you just go, good God, is there any brand that's special that these guys don't have or aren't going to have? Pretty cool.
Yeah, I think with a lot of these other NFT platforms that are really not doing well right now, the licenses that they have will probably come to Veve within the next year or two, because
they have to, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to make money, or they want to make more money. I mean, let's say you make, I don't know, 30,000 or 50,000 on one of these other platforms. You know, you could make like, you know, 8x that or 10x that on Veve. It's like, okay, well, I get you don't want to back the truck up and redo all these negotiations and whatnot, but I mean, there's almost nothing better than being shoulder to shoulder with like Disney and Universal, and regardless of who your brand is, like that, you kind of all want to stick together, be in the same shopping center. You know, you don't want to be the only one in the shopping center 3 miles away. You know, there's only so many people that are going to go visit.
Yeah, you get 100% of, you know, 10 cents, or you can have 10% of $1 million. You know what I'm trying to say. I mean, one just works out a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, and you have, so when you talk about, you know, your love is this chasing animals, how is when OMI does go to the moon in like the next year or two, as it does like an 8x, a 10x, you know, in 2.5 years, probably 100x. How is that going to affect your work? How is that going to affect your travels? Will you travel more or less?
Way more. You know, I feel like so much more of the sand is out of the hourglass than is in the hourglass. And so already it's a full court press with me, you know, between booking safaris in OMI, that's where all my money goes. And so again, it sounds probably a bit grandiose, but if, an image of a big tusker and telling the story that there's only 24 of them left on the planet and that the image and the story that I tell is powerful enough, and that leads to somebody, perhaps buying the image or at least donating to one of the trusts that help protect this environment, then, that's the end game. That's the ultimate that I'd like to accomplish. And I don't know that I can ever get there, but the more time I can spend in the field, then, it's a simple rule, and it's probably no different in any business. Whoever's in the field the most wins.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that it is. But that also allows me, to not let my images make the donations to conservation, right? I'm a pretty simple guy. I got a, Toyota SUV out front that's got 225,000 miles on it that I bought for $5,000 cash. And a car is supposed to get you from one place to the other and provide some utility. And that's what it does for me. And, and if OMI goes to $5 tomorrow, that's not going to change. I'm just going to, I might go buy a new $5,000 one to replace it that's got 180,000 miles on it, But what it does allow me to do is, if there's 10 million or 15 million or 50 million sitting there, it allows me to take some of these places that I've been privileged to see, like Barana, which is going to be the model for all of Africa from a conservation and how it brings the entire community of people raising cattle and all of these things and how they can graze their cattle there. And then because of that, and the fact that they're making more money on their cattle, that poachers don't come into that area because the village people realize that the rhino and the income the rhino provides allows them to graze their cattle, which makes a better life for them. So now all boats rise higher, as you said before, and that becomes the model versus the economic model in South Africa where rhinos are being poached. And there probably won't be a rhino in South Africa 10 years from now because there's such poverty that bad operators can come in and go, look, you'll be lucky to make $1,000 in your life. If you go kill a rhino and bring me his horn, I'll give you 20,000 and your family's rich for the rest of your life. So, at this point, I can't make much of an impact there. I just do the best I can. I give them an image, they can auction it off and make some money and it goes to the cause and that kind of thing. But, with 25 or 15 or 30 or 50 million there, when you go to Barana, you can make some, not unlike you right now, you can donate to a wildlife sanctuary, but you're positioning yourself to where when your dreams and goals hit, you can create the wildlife sanctuary. So I would just be able to up what I want. And then, instead of taking a month off while I recharge body, mind, and bank account, I can go from Antarctica to Japan to chase the snow monkeys to, go to do these, these different kind of things and just keep rattling them off and create, more and more of that following. And hopefully, people just being like, man, I can't wait to see what he drops next because I never even knew Madagascar existed, let alone these giant spires that these monkeys jump from one to the other 50 feet through the air and this magnificent. So it just would 10x or 100x everything that I'm currently doing.
Madagascar is a relatively small place compared to the rest of Africa, but I have I'm under no illusion that it'll be easy and that there are. I imagine those people that you had in Rwanda do a very good job and doing the best that they can for these sanctuaries and to help protect these animals. I want to hire my friends. Like I want to hire like a bunch of people that I served with and be like, hey, you want to kill some poachers? and then watch them go, yeah, I want to kill some poachers. Not that they'd go hunting for them or anything. Obviously, you have to go within, the country's laws. But that's the other thing. How good are some of these countries at allowing foreigners to do this? Like, oh, this American's going to come in and roll in with his American troops, and
Well, you'd probably be able to answer it better than me, man, because there's for example, Rwanda, Kenya, a couple of these kind of places, they haven't had a poaching event in 14 years.
okay, so they're fine.
But in Barana, for example, the area I was talking about with the rhinos, man, you would geek out on it because it's a military operation. I was fortunate to get taken into their ops room, and I've never been in a military ops room, so I can't tell. You would be able to, but that's what it felt like. I went in, and there's 4 giant screens, and there's electronics everywhere. They know they've got infrared here. They've got guys that are constantly out on patrol, coming back into patrol, going out for 3 days in the bush. No one knows where they are other than them. They're infrared. They're doing the whole thing. Like it's, they're training, every morning running 5K with their gear. It's the real deal, but for example, Rwanda, you go just over the border, you're in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and there's real strife. There's real political turmoil. People on the take. Guerrillas are getting poached, and so in those areas, you'd be better served than me to know what would happen if the right people come in with the right offer and the right amounts of money, because money's a big difference maker, right? The reason rhinos are being poached is because of the extreme poverty. And so if there's a way to try and tilt those scales, it has to be done. It has to be done in a way that evens the scales, because, these people are being offered tens of thousands of dollars to risk their lives to go kill a rhino and get their horn. So what's their incentive to not do it? And so that has to be, there has to be some economic things there. And so it's a really, it's a really, really complicated, really complicated question.
Yeah. So again, I have to learn. I mean, I was never in AFRICOM. That's a whole other thing from where I was. I've had friends that have served in Niger and Kenya, but I don't think in any of the places that you had just mentioned where they're killing gorillas or they're killing rhinos. I would, and again, it's not going to be a one-time thing. It would probably be, hey, you're gonna have to be here for a 6-month thing, and we're gonna have to rotate, or maybe they go out there for a year, and it's probably gonna be hundreds of thousands of dollars a year that I have to pay them. Because, so yeah, I don't know. It's
and I think just off the top of my head, and I've only been there a few times, but I do think there's the establishment, if you will, the anti-poaching establishment, is always under huge financial strain, man. How do you they're always looking for money and donations and trying to raise money so that they can, because you're talking about a multi-million-dollar, we're just talking about rhinos. You're talking about on a mature rhino's head, that's $1.5 million. And you're talking about a giant international black market for rhino horns. And so these guys that are, trying to make that money illegally, it's no hobby for them. You're talking about big business. And these guys that, some of these poachers are going in and they're using the greatest equipment on earth, to try and avoid surveillance and all of these kind of things. And so, you have to fight fire with fire, and you have to have the equipment, and you have to have the skill, and you have to have the training. All of that costs money. And so whether it's you bringing trained guys there that can work and help train on the ground troops, or if it's, you supplying, monetary backing so that they can, pay these guys enough so that when a bad operator is offering bribes to these guys to cut a hole in the fence and let them in for a night so they can grab this and get out, right? So silly amounts of money is what it took to make a place like Barana work, to where you could lift and create secure borders and lift up an entire community. And you're right, it's not an easy answer, but it's an answer that one component part has to be sick amounts of money.
How much we talk? Is it like a couple million or like tens of millions?
Oh, you're talking, $1 million to $2 million, depending on where you are, would cover an entire area's operating budget for anti-poaching. And so you could make
For a year?
You
Okay.
could make huge strides with that kind of money. You wouldn't need, and the other thing is, man, there's real strategic partnerships to be made. There's people in these places that have made, either through inheriting or incredible successful business, that have done what you've done, that you're wanting to do. They've come there and now they're trying to, take Barana and expand it into neighboring communities. And that expansion takes more people and it takes more money. And so there's strategic partnerships to be made for people that have the right heart and the right bank account as well, to come in and go, yeah, man, I can add some gasoline to this fire.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm also not getting any younger. I'm 32, which is which I know is still relatively young for most of the rest of the world, but I'm not 24 anymore. So it's, by the time this happens, and maybe I'm 35, 37, just lose a step here, lose a step there. But I want to be like the most. I want to have a bounty on my head for like $10 million, because that's the disruption that I want to have over there.
Yeah, and that's what it takes, man. It takes it takes that kind of single-minded, dogged determination and that dedication to the wildlife and the preservation of it. And so, yeah, that's, again, the answer is really difficult and multi-tiered and goes in a lot of different directions, but at the heart of it is cash.
Yeah. I'll keep putting as much as I can into OMI, and then we'll get there. We'll get there one way or another.
I agree 100%, man. I agree.
Yeah. So on bringing it back to your work, you just had a partner with Sotheby's. Tell me about that. Tell me a little about how that worked and how that came about.
So no different than what you're talking about. What we were just talking about with strategic partnerships.
Yeah.
In Africa, and instead of you trying to reinvent the wheel, you partner with somebody that's got the wheel, and you just want to make the wheel bigger and faster and accelerate and all of those kind of things. And so, for me, we're leaving the digital world now. We're just talking about paper, ink, and wood, which is, the elements of what I'm putting on your wall, which, by the way, we got to do something about that wall behind you. That I can't stand seeing those white walls, and we got to get something. I think what we're going to do is we're going to get this figured out, and I'm going to send you that wolf with the pork chop in his mouth, and we're going to put that bad boy right behind you.
Oh, God, that'd be epic.
Yeah.
Oh, you really don't have to do that. If you could, I know that's like one of your favorite pieces, or if your favorite piece.
I have yet to print it big, and so we'll get you the first one. We'll figure that out after we get done. I'll get an address from you, and we'll get it to you. But so for me, the pieces that I'm doing are they're limited edition. They're 1 of 11, and they're signed. They're numbered, and they're all big. I think the smallest one that I have anywhere right now is 48 by 48, and I just put one on a wall here in town that's the finished piece is 8 foot wide by almost 6 feet tall. 2 cheetahs in a giant tree in Africa. One of the most amazing moments that I've had. But they go from $10,000 a piece up to $30,000 a piece, and so the question then becomes, how do you reach those people? I'm a small town Iowa kid that didn't know $1 million from a hole in the ground, and so I'm not from that world, but marketing is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I love just trying to figure out problems, and especially getting kind of guerrilla marketing and thinking of partnerships and those kind of things. And so these things are either going to hang in people's second, third, or fourth home, most likely, or perhaps a corporate boardroom, or someone like you that wants to hang something badass behind their head when they're talking to their people. And so for me, Sotheby's is the highest value residential marketing house in the world. They got 1,100 locations. They won't even list a home, I think, unless it's $1 million plus. And so when you talk about $1 million home, there's probably a $100,000 to a $200,000 furniture and art budget. And so at a minimum, that seemed to me like a good place to start. And so when I went out west into Montana, I just did it the old-fashioned way, man. I took one of my photography books, and I walked into the Sotheby's there, and I asked to see the boss, and she was kind enough to give me 5 minutes, and I shared my vision, which was they had a very black and white entryway and lobby area, and it was just all blank white walls with a big black Sotheby's, super clean, super. But the first time I went by it at night, I could see the light shining out of the window, and I was like, I got to have one of my pieces on that wall. Like it just screamed. Like I'm not kidding you. It drives me crazy looking at you. I can see that wolf behind you the whole time. But and so I just said, like, here's my vision for the partnership. Let's decorate your walls with badass Montana art. Let's put a wild stallion. Let's put a grizzly bear. Let's put a big giant barn that I took a photo of in front of the Tetons. Let's put these pieces in here, and then let's form a partnership. You become my gallery. I dress up your, and so that's how that started. And my hope and my plan is, we're just getting ready to hang those pieces, is that we create a success story there.
So you're about to say sex store. I was like, okay, that's a good term.
Yeah, maybe that was a Freudian slip. I don't know, but no, we create a success story there, and then multiply it by all 1,100 of their locations. And everybody that walks through there is walking through there with a reason, and that reason is to either sell or buy a beautiful home. And at some point, they're going to have to go out into the world and buy the furniture and the art for that. And if I can head them off at the pass, and while they walk in there, they go, well, this will save us a trip, honey. We like that, and we like that. So let's cross that off our list, and out they go with the art. And so that's the start. It's not sexy. It's just rolling up your sleeves and deciding who'd be a proper partnership. It was why I was excited for Megs and Lions to introduce me to you, because I think there's something here with a digital play with what we're doing. And at the same time, possibly marrying the two, where somebody might say, I'll take that, I'll take that giraffe for 15 grand, and I want a NFT to go with it. And I'll go, all right, you can have that for free. Or, I'll take that giraffe for NFT for 15 grand, and I'll say, great. What size do you want? The real life one to hang in your business or your cabin. And so that's the story, and it'll be a work in progress. We've got the attention of the one in Bozeman, and if anybody knows about Big Sky, Montana, they know that that's one of the wealthier areas in the country as well. And there's a Sotheby's there. And so we'll create a success story in those two, hopefully. And then, you know, art sells art. So the more of it you get out there, the more of it that, especially in this world of high-end collectibles, you know, you go over to your buddy's house to have 2 fingers of scotch and he's got something on his wall or a gun in his collection. If you're a gun guy and you go, where the hell did you get that? You go, well, I know this guy and he's got 2 more. You know, you call that guy and, you know, so that's how it works. So that's the vision. And then we've created, as I shared with you, I think it's the first virtual gallery in the world.
On your spatial.
On spatial. And that's a work in progress, but I think that there's real opportunity there because right now, if you're in London, I can send you to my gallery from your living room. You don't have to, you know, you don't have to fly to the United States to walk through and see the pieces. Plus you can hang unlimited pieces. I can put 50 pieces in there for, you know, essentially nothing versus, you know, what would otherwise be $500,000. So I think that, you know, at some point we'll have parties in there and we'll have open houses in there and maybe, you know, a rock concert in there. I mean, all of these things are available, but for right now it's bricks and mortar, and maybe in the very soon future, you and I will work together and start this Predator line and maybe something really cool can happen there and they can feed each other. So, you know, like you, my mind just goes crazy and I've already, you know, things are just fire.
Yeah, I'd love that. I mean, figure just to probably give the NFT utility, say like, hey, when you buy the NFT, it comes with that people really love utility, so it would come with the physical. And yeah, I think that'd be really cool, because then people at some point, you know, you could sell the NFT and then, you know, you could keep the physical. But some people like the golden Veve logo, on Veve. A lot of people really want the card to go, the actual physical card for the redemption code, and they have cases for it and they want that. So I think that's incentive for people to want both, and it's incentive for the buyers. Say like, oh, give me that, because then I could just sell the NFT. You'll make your 5%, whatever it is, that vig on the resale, and then they still get to keep the physical. They did that recently, I think, with Tiffany and CryptoPunks. They did something similar to like that. You could choose one or the other.
Yeah, I think maybe, you know, for an old fogey like me that, you know, comes to the digital space much later in life, I think it's also an opportunity where if someone, you know, is like, I don't understand that. I just want the, you know, the 2 cheetahs for 25 grand and I want it in my boardroom. You know, I think it's also another opportunity to kind of maybe lead people into the space as well and go, look, you're getting this NFT thing for free because you already did this. Just trust me. You're going to have a use for it at some time. You're going to start your own little collector's museum, or, you know, you're going to be able to maybe in a year or 3 years or whatever, move it for, you know, X, and you won't give a damn because you didn't really want that part in the first place. So you make a little money there. So I agree with you, even with my, you know, 3-year-old knowledge of the space. I think that they can wash each other's hands, and there will be some that think it's really cool because, you know, there's people like Lions and Megs that you know, they open this thing up and they've got this great collector room with all this different things. So I think you will have, you know, even somebody like you're like, yeah, I've got the wolf eating the bison right behind me, and I also have it in my, you know, in my collectible space here, my Predator series as well. So I think maybe you catch some people that really dig both spaces.
Yeah, we could do it either probably on Polygon or Immutable X, and we could have like a thing where if you pay an OMI, I don't know, you get like a 3% discount or whatever instead of paying with Ethereum. You know, say gas fee, something like that.
You know, and the thing too, dude, I'll say this, and it's got my head just so cranking now because I couldn't get this whole targeted kind of 15% Predator series that we're talking about, where you get these badass animals in a badass situation, and it's not the kind of thing that the 50-year-old lady, nothing against 50-year-old ladies, I'm 56, you know, wants to put, you know, in her living room when the other ladies come over to have tea, but that's not our target market. So we don't care about that. Right.
Yeah.
We're trying to create this niche where people are like, yeah, I want the lion like this with the thing underneath it like this, knowing what's about to happen. And that becomes, and we capture a few of those and maybe create, some real excitement about those really powerful images of predators being predators.
And you've had your physical said they're one of 11, right?
That's right.
So, I mean, we could have something similar where it could be, well, I know you really like that one particular shot. I would say it could be like two lions in a fight, or it could be a part of the same 2 minutes that happened, or 5 minutes where it happened, but here's the picture, and it goes in series 1 to 11, where they could all be different, and it's all a different part of the story. But again, if you just like it as a, hey, I got this shot, and we'll just do print that 11 times, that's fine as well.
I think it's wise to understand who's the teacher and who's the student, and in this particular case, I am the latter. And so, if we were going to do something together, you would be like, I think if it works best, you do, this, then that's how I roll. But if the wolf over the bison with the pork chop in his mouth, man, I'm offering that up right now. If that's something that we want to like trot out there and figure out a way to just be like, hey, everybody, what do you think about this? We might make a series of it. If you dig it, then, we're going to follow up with lions and polar bears and all the, apex predators of the world above water and, underwater. Then, I think that would be dope. And then, we figure out how it works with maybe a real art piece to complement it, or, again, the more I talk, the more people listening to this will realize I don't understand a damn thing that I talk about. So, I can, but the idea of chopping it up and creating a predator series in some way that you think would work, I'm telling you right now, I'm in on that.
You mentioned underwater. Have you taken photos underwater? And like, what type of equipment do you have for that?
Not to any real extent, but it is like I've learned to scuba dive in the last year, and so swimming with killer whales, getting in some of these situations. I have, probably not this year, but the next year, I'll be going to South Africa and teaming up with a crew that they specialize in dragging for great whites. And so getting that perfect shot of a great white coming out and the jaws and the whole explosion and getting in those scenarios. So, you can't, it'll be down the road, but I don't think you could do justice to a real predator series without paying some homage to the killers in the water, including the crocodiles and the sharks and, the things that are going on there. So I'm not in position to do it yet, but it's on my radar. It's a whole nother world. I mean, it's 60 some percent bigger than the world we all are accustomed to. There's more going on under the water than above it.
Have you ever taken requests or somebody says like, hey, I want this type of shot, and then you do it, or is just whatever you take is what you take, and then if people like it, cool. If they don't, they don't?
I'd love to. I haven't yet, but all it would take is for somebody, to, have the bankroll and have the desire. And if they're like, hey, like you talk about what could be a rad collection in this series. I spent a week with one of the 8 black leopards known to exist on the planet, and I have some sick shots. And I mean, you want to talk about an animal that exists in the realm of comic book and reality at the same time. It's a black leopard. I mean, when you get close enough, you can see the black on black spots, and they're just a mythical creature. And I was there for all of it. I mean, I got to see it, on the hunt. I got to see it kill these little antelope that are the smallest antelopes in the world. They're called dik-diks, D-I-K. And I got a shot of them. I got an incredible shot of one after a kill, after it's taken it up in the tree, and its tail is 6 feet long, and it's in this thorn bush, and it's just rad. And I mean, it would be perfect for this thing that we're talking about, man, because it's basically a comic book character that has come to life. You know, it's a amazing. And so, yeah, there's some really cool stuff we could do with some really unique animals and situations. And the cool thing is, like, if you catch one in 3 months that you're like, dude, we got to make that, then we do it. And if you strike out for 5 months, you know, rarity is important. So it's not like we want to be dropping one every 2 weeks anyway. You know, you want people to be like, oh, when they see one's coming, that's the way I want to be, right? So when you find one of these things like a black leopard or, you know, a rhino that just, you know, a hippopotamus that just took something and just chomped it, and, you know, there's some, the more we talk, like, you're already starting to see it in me, dude. You get me on this line, I start to get super stoked, and I can, you know, I'll chase some, I'll go sit in the Himalayas and try to get the shot of a snow leopard and freeze my ass off for 3 weeks straight if I think I can get it.
Yeah, I mean, also, like you said, now, you know, recharge your batteries in between. I mean, has there ever been a time where you're just like, you come home from a trip, and even though you got an amazing shot, or maybe you haven't, where you're just like, I'm done, man. Like, my body cannot take much more of this.
Yeah. I was just so spent when I came home from this last trip. It was 10 weeks. I'd get up at 3:30 in the morning, hit my workout. So, you know, by 4:30 I was done. By 5 o'clock I was having coffee. By 5:30 we were headed to the field. By 6:30 the sun was coming up, and then you're on the go, you know, and by 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And so, you know, I'm a pretty lean guy. I keep myself pretty fit, but by the end of the 10 weeks, you know, I'd went from like 203 to like 190. I'd lost like 12 pounds. I got back home jet lagged, and I was sick and in bed. You know, it just got me. You know, I was sick in bed for 2 weeks, and so, you know, you're there to work, and at the same time, you know, every day, you know, in the world that I'm dealing with, you know, the grizzly bear is the highest selling shot I've ever had, and that we sold one of those, the first one of those, for 30,000. And so, you know, you get out of bed and you go, if it happens today, and, you know, you're going to do a run of 11, and it might take a while for him to go, but, you know, you do the math and you're like, 25 times 11, you know, I could go out and possibly take a $250,000 shot today.
Yeah.
And I like money as much as the next guy. It's not the only reason I do it, but it is a component of it. And so I know the more shots I take that kick ass, the more money I make, the more I can move the needle and help in conservation efforts, so on and so forth. So, you know, the juice, the thrill, the money, all of those things, you know, I'll go until my body stops me.
Is that's not the one you were talking about, was it?
That's it.
Oh, that is it.
Yeah, I chased that bear. I did research, found out where it was outside of Teton National Park, because you can't get very close to bears in the national parks, even if, you know, it's a perfectly safe situation. So I found out where that bear was, and got up near it. And that was the third night in a row. And the bear was feeding slowly up this hill, and nice and calm, and knew I was there. But once it got to the crest of the hill, I was laying on my belly 30 meters in front of it. And when it crested the hill, I had the shot I wanted. I cracked off 10 of them as quick as I could, and I stood up nice and slow. And I wasn't very far from my bus, for obvious reasons, because they can get to 30 miles an hour really quick. But that shot is sitting in a guy's boardroom, and it's 6 feet tall by 4 feet wide, and it knocks you over when you see it. I mean, the eyes are pin sharp, and you can feel the thing. I can still see, looking through that camera, that thing, just his eyes just locking on me, and it was chill. It knew I was there. There was no problem. It was in a really, you know, it didn't even skip a beat. I don't even think when it lifted its head up and crested the hill, that it stopped chewing on its grass. But, you know, I can still see those eyes, you know, like they were 2 feet from me, because of the camera I was using and the clarity of it. And it's just remarkable. And obviously the collector saw the same. But yeah, it's really something.
Wow. So there's, everyone has like their favorites. Lions and cheetahs are really awesome. I like wolves over coyotes. What are some of the animals that you're just like, man, these things are annoying. Man, these things are like nasty. Like I think like coyotes sometimes, can be nasty. They eat people's dogs and yeah. What about you?
I'm no fan of the magpie, I'll tell you that. It's just this super annoying scavenger bird,
Yeah.
and they're just all over, and they're noisy as hell. I flipped on a hyenas. I originally was just like, man, these things are just like these scavenger la la, and as soon as I saw them in action, I realized, I mean, they're they're just bred for killing. They're all shoulders and neck, and
Yeah.
when you see them tear into something, the force and the ability of their bite and the things they can do, I don't know that I'm a fan, but my God, I have huge respect, huge respect for them. I'll tell you, the animal that really pisses me off is the warthog,
Why the warthog?
because they're impossible to get a photograph of.
Oh, yeah.
And for people that don't know warthog necessarily, if you saw The Lion King, that's Pumbaa. It's that fat little bowling ball looking with the tusks out the front. But they're so unique, and it's probably just me with sour grapes, but they're so unique that you always are just looking to get a shot of them. And the minute that one sees you, they turn and show you their ass. Like, you can't get in front of one. It's absolutely, they're the most, and I guess if you're the land bacon of the safari, that's the only way that you stay alive, is anything that lays its eyes on you, you run like hell. But those things, I shouldn't say I hate them. They just piss me off because I've raised my camera no less than 500 times, and never, by the time I get my camera up, I just see this tail straight up in the air and its ass going away from me. So that would probably be the number one on my annoying list.
So I'll find the picture for you later. I couldn't show it here. There was a picture of a dude, and he looked like to be 6 foot something, a couple 100 pounds, like maybe 220. And something was going on. I don't know if he was a photographer or what was going on, but a warthog got him in the leg, and you see his femur. You see like meat where that's not supposed to be, and it's like, oh, so, and you don't really think that when you think of a warthog, but that tusk, that thing, it got him in the way where it split from like maybe a couple inches above his knee to maybe a few inches below the hip. It was a big gash, and I don't know what happened to the dude. I don't know if he lost his leg.
Most every prey animal in Africa I've seen dead. I've never seen a warthog killed.
Oh.
And I think that's why their tusks are freaking lethal.
Yeah.
And predators are by nature lazy. They look for the weak. They're not trying to kill anything that can hurt them. And so I think, unless times are just incredibly hard, which they almost never are on the savannah, there's always antelope and all of these things that can't hurt you. And so that story is not surprising to me at all, because those tusks are held in. They have huge respect with the Maasai and all of that. Like, they're just like, you don't want one of those to get a piece of you. And that's exactly why.
Yeah, because of that, it was wild.
Those little things will just swing that. And if they catch you with one, it's better than a Bowie knife you ever whacked anybody with.
Yeah, it's over. It's over. I'll look for the picture I just tried Googling it. It wasn't happening. But yeah, well, we've been going about 2 hours, so we'll end it here. Is there anything that you wanna tell people? Is there anything that you want to go and say, like, hey, the message you want, whether it's for your new NFT project or your website or just the message you want
You know
to
what,
carry
man?
out.
I think, you know, I'm here to learn. It's what I was most excited about, to meet you. And I just love to hear, you know, from your audience, if they think this predator project you and I are talking about has got some teeth, no pun intended. I'm super stoked about it. Even if they say no, if you're excited about it, I'm still going to do it, because I think it would be cool to work with you on a project. I can learn a ton. But I think more than anything, that's what I'd love to know is if anybody's psyched about, you know, us doing this wolf over the bison, you know, with a big pork chop in his mouth, and they think that that's a cool collectible, and they'd like to be excited about being the first to own, you know, this Predator series collaboration that the real Randy Chavez and me put together. That'd be thrilling to me. Like I said, I think you and me are stoked about it, so we're probably the kind of guys that'll do it, even if everybody says that they think it's stupid. But I got a sense that maybe they won't. But I'd love to hear that. Other than that, you know,
Yeah, and I've got a few connections in the art world. I get invited to go to Art Basel. I missed this last year, but I'll go this year.
Can I when you go, can I go with you? It's a show I want to get into. So if there's connections to be made, I'd love to shadow you in Miami, and I would go in a second with you, bro.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, the invitations for last year. I'm sure I'll get an invite this year as well.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, I that shouldn't be an issue. That should be fine.
Yeah. So that's it, man. I was, like I said, I'm selfish. I wanted to meet you. You know, you got a huge reputation in this area, and the more we've talked, you know, the more, like I said, when I first got on here, that I could feel that there might be a brothership here and some shared interest. And so, you know, I'm really stoked for that, and a chance to even introduce myself, and the fact that we might do some collectibles together to your audience. Then mission accomplished for me, man. If they want
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be fun.
if they want to find me, they're smart people in this world. They'll find me on Instagram or anywhere else they want to. So I don't need to do any of that stupid crap.
All right, cool beans. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for the support. Thank you, Jeremy Lyons, for the super chat. Justin for becoming a new member. Scott Gladys for becoming a new member. Everyone say bye-bye to Dashi. Bye-bye, Dashi. I'll catch you all later. Bye-bye, guys.
Peace.